Hello, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to Business Breakthroughs presented by Invest Ottawa. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. Stay with us for the next 30 minutes as we chat with local small business owners who had to find unique ways to pivot during the pandemic and who will share some of their secrets to staying resilient in challenging times. Today's show is the fashion edition, and I have the great pleasure of being joined by two very passionate entrepreneurs who believe that when you look good, you feel good, and their goal is to keep you looking your best. First, I'd like to introduce Camila Bousquet. Camila is a fashion stylist and designer based in Ottawa. She first worked in fashion retail during her studies at business school and then worked at tech startups where her colleagues kept asking her for fashion advice. That prompted her to start her own company, Bousquet Fashion, and offer her fashion knowledge to executives and professionals across the globe. Welcome to the show, Camila.
Thank you for having me, Barbara. I'm excited to be here.
It's our pleasure to host you today. And next, I am so pleased to welcome Malika Benson. Malika is the owner and the creative mind behind Akani Designs, which was launched during the height of the pandemic in May 2020. She grew up in the Ottawa region and has always had a passion for fashion and African wax fabrics. So she took that passion and turned it into a lucrative business venture. Today, Akani Designs specializes in making modern apparel and accessories with traditional and modern fabrics for both men and women. Thank you so much for joining us today, Malika.
Thanks for having me.
Malika, I'd like to start with asking a little bit about your story. Tell us a little bit about where the idea of Akani Designs came from.
So the idea of Akani Design came from my passion on my passion regarding Ankara fabric. I've always had a passion. It's been years and years that I've been, uh, working with those fabric, looking at them, trying to determine, what I could make with them. And during the pandemic, while I had a bit of extra time on my hand, because I do have a full time job and I have kids as well. So I decided to use the fabrics that I had at home in order to create new things. And I was really pleasantly surprised by the reaction of the community who decided to embrace, the fabric and, join me on my journey. And that's when my mask and my scarves and my kimono started selling through my online store, but also through the distributor that I work with.
And how did you come across those fabrics? Were these fabrics that you had worn yourself and saw your family wear as well?
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, I had some Gabonese friends in high school, and that's when I discovered the fabric. And the father of my children is also from Cameroon, so it's been it's been a long time since I've had I discovered those fabric, and I've taken really an interest in them. So yeah, that's a little bit the story of how I discovered them.
And you started with clothing and fashion at a very young age. Didn't you tell me when we were chatting earlier on the phone, you mentioned that you had a sewing machine when you were very young. Were you sewing your own clothes at a young age as well?
I wasn't sewing my own clothes. I had a little sewing machine that was for children, and my mother taught me how to sew some pants and some shirts and skirts for my Barbies. That's when it all started. I was about 6 or 7 years old, so that's when the big passion started. And my mother also was really passionate about fabric, and she took me along with her when she was going on to Fabric Land, and that's I think that's a little when that's when the passion was born. It also comes from my mother.
I remember those days of going to Fabricland with my mother as well. Did you ever think when you were a little girl that you'd one day have your own fashion line?
No, I didn't think about it. It's just something that when you're passionate about something, it comes back to you at some point in your life. Even though you go on and you do other things, but it comes back. And I never thought that I would have my own fashion line. So it's something that I'm really happy about.
So here you are. I want to shift the gears to Camila, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey and how your background in business and tech has helped you form this business as a stylist and as a designer. Tell us a little bit about how it all began.
Yeah, so my passion for fashion also started at a very young age. Like Malika said, what you are meant to do will always come back to you. So when I was working in business and in tech, I just really wanted to dress well, present myself professionally because I was young and I needed to be taken seriously. So all of my colleagues would come up to me and ask me for my fashion advice, whether that was because they had a pitch coming up, or they wanted to look good for a date, or they just were overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that they had and they couldn't find their own style. So little by little, that's really how my services started. I would hang out with my colleagues on weekends and help them discover their style. That grew onto, thanks to Instagram and social media in general, I started sharing a little bit more about that journey, and more people started getting interested in what I had to offer. And to begin with, I didn't have a price set. I didn't even know you could price having fun. So it was thanks to the help of Invest Ottawa that I learned how to price my services, how to offer them to a wider audience, and really become self-employed after that.
I definitely want to hear more about the pain points that you had that the Digital Mainstreet program helped you resolve or address. But first, I'm really curious to know, what were some of the common pain points that your colleagues had when putting together their own personal style or a fashionable look?
So the first pain point was the overwhelm of items that they already had. People accumulate clothing during their lifetime, and it's not wired into our brain that eventually we need to start sorting them, repairing them, getting rid of some, donating it to a younger little cousin, things like that. So I was helping them with that journey to begin with what they already had. Then another main pain point was going shopping. A lot of people are terrified of going shopping, and that's why they end up with a weird array of clothing. It's because their mother, their aunt, their grandma do the shopping for them without really knowing their own style or size necessarily. So
Now, I just want to clarify that you specialize mostly in menswear and men's fashion.
So I would say right now my clientele is 75% men and 25% women. Naturally, I know how to dress myself, so I can help other women as well with that journey. But it just turned out that when I was working in tech startups, a majority of my colleagues were men, so that's where I started. And when I was working in retail, so I worked in retail for a few years, 6 years while I was studying. Finishing high school and college. And I worked in women's shops, so Boutique Jacob, Dynamite, Garage. And after that, in 2015, Nordstrom opened, and I wanted to challenge myself. So I said I would like to apply for the men's section and learn about suiting. So that's how I know about both.
And so you provide your services to men that you mentioned earlier, that they don't necessarily tend to shop for themselves. They might be overwhelmed by the items in their closet. Any other pain points that you help them address?
So yeah, they don't necessarily shop for themselves, so I'm able to create a mood board. There's a lot of technology out there, especially during the pandemic. I discovered a lot of it. So I'm able to do virtual style boards, and all they have to do is click on the items that they like. And it's as easy as figuring that out. And other pain points is not knowing their sizes. So it's very rare, surprisingly, I found that people just don't measure themselves regularly. And so I used to do that And your body shape also changes throughout the course of your life, throughout the course of months, particularly for women, but for men that also stands true. So it's important to measure yourself to make sure that you're getting the right size when you're shopping. And another pain point that I fix is tailoring. So lots of people just buy things off of the rack and they think that it's a done deal. However, you can optimize a piece of clothing tenfold by tailoring it to your own body.
So I'm curious, how have people's wardrobes changed during the pandemic? Is looking good still as important to your clients? Are people showing up the same way on camera as they would in real life, or are they looking for some shortcuts?
There's definitely been a shift. One of the namely shortcuts is that they try to look good from the waist up. The rest doesn't really matter anymore. So they want to be comfortable at the bottom, and they want to look put together on top. So I always recommend things like bright colors and top, and you can be a little bit more casual. A lot of work has allowed for that flexibility. So I try to find pieces that will like whether they're like natural fabrics or something that's just more comfortable in general, so that they can wear it all day long.
So speaking of comfort, that's a great segue to go back to Malika, because your designs really are all about comfort, 100% natural cotton, loose fitting. You're actually wearing one of your designs right now. Talk to us a little bit about how your designs kind of have evolved to meet people's current needs for clothing and how they want to feel during the day when they're mostly working from home.
So African fabric was traditionally worn like in Africa, in Western Africa and Central Africa. Not necessarily here, except for maybe certain celebration. So what Akani Design aims to do is adapt it in a way that can be worn here in the North American climate, either by mixing it with other types of fabric that are worn here, or by creating designs that are loose fitting that you can put on top of jeans or leggings or shorts, in order to go about your day and look stylish and add like that little punch of color to your wardrobe. So that's a little bit how I try to adapt my items that are created through the brand. For instance, for example, what I'm wearing right now is a short kimono. I'm wearing it on top of a tank top. I'm wearing my jeans. It's very loose fitting. It's made with 100% cotton. The sleeves are short, so it's something that's very comfortable, to be worn at home. If you want to, add a little bit of, color to your wardrobe, and if you want to look good, while on a Zoom meeting or on a Teams meeting, you can just add your kimono on top of whatever you're wearing, and it's gonna have that punch. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's how I try to adapt to the current environment, and also the fact that people's work environment are changing, and people are now working from home, and they want to go in their garden or in the kitchen, when they're in their breaks. So it's something that's very versatile as well.
And talk to us a little bit about the fabric. Why is it called wax fabric? Where does the wax come into play?
So it's a piece of cotton where there's design that's printed on it with using wax. So that's where the wax term comes from, and initially it was to tell a story. There's all this oral tradition that comes from the motherland, where people used to tell story through the fabric that they used to wear, and then they used to tell maybe stories about what they went through, what village, what tribe they come from, things that happened in their past. So that's a little bit the idea behind the designs. It's in order to tell a story, or a story about your social class, or about, like I said, about the tribe or the village that you come from. So that's why it's called wax fabric, because it's wax that's printed on top of cotton.
The idea of using fabric as a form of nonverbal communication is absolutely fascinating. Is there a story to some of the prints that you've chosen to feature in your designs, or maybe what you're wearing now? What does some of the motifs or designs mean, and have you chosen them because they mean something personal to you?
Well, I mostly choose them because, I do a lot of research, market research on what is popular and what's trending. So that's the way I go about, choosing and selecting the fabric that I use with. But some of them do tell a story. Like the one that I'm wearing right now doesn't necessarily tell a story, but there's one that tells a story about, it's called, My Husband is Capable. It's a yellow fabric where, there is like something that are it's kind of like a print that are lips on it, and it means, my husband is capable. There's another one that's called Red Disc. It talks about, the music that people use. There's one that's called Wedding Flowers. It's worn primarily in wedding, and it's a way of expressing, the fact, that, people are gathering together and celebrating the love of two people that are, taking that, journey of being together. So there's a lot of stories. There's a lot of fabric also. So every one of them tells a particular story, and some of them don't, because throughout the years it's been adapted. It has changed. It has mutated into something else. But traditionally, that was what was printed on the fabric. It was a way to tell a story, in order to kind of like translate the oral tradition to future generations.
So, how many different kinds of designs and items of clothing do you currently offer as part of your line?
About a dozen, mostly geared towards women. I would say, as a, my fabric are worn, primarily by women. I would say 80% women and maybe 10% men. I'm also into home decor. I have a couple of cushion covers and other things that people can purchase in order to enhance the decor in their house. But yeah, about a dozen.
And you can get those primarily online, or are there some stores locally that carry your designs as well?
Well, I mainly operate through True Platform. There's Etsy, and there's also my new website, created by my digital Mainstreet, the Shop Here program, which I'm very grateful for, because I would
It's
not
a
have
great
had the
website.
capacity. Yes, yes, I would not have had the capacity to create a website by myself. I would have to outsource it to somebody else. So it was a really great program, not only because they created the website, but they taught me how to maintain it, and I was able through the transformation team to also acquire some of the knowledge to market my brand and to develop like an effective marketing strategy. So that's very great. So there's Etsy, there's my website, and there's also I have a couple of physical store that carry some of my items. One in Gatineau, one in Ottawa, one in Montreal, and another one in the Bywood Market. So actually two in Ottawa.
That's fantastic. And I'm curious, if someone would like to wear your designs and they're not of African origin, how can they wear them in a respectful way?
So my designs are open to anybody, not necessarily people of Afro descent and people from Africa. Me myself, I'm Haitian. I'm from Haitian, parent. They're open to everybody, anybody who would want to. Who likes the culture, who likes the fabric, and who likes the colors, and who also want to celebrate. Because I find it like by wearing it, it's a way to celebrate a culture. So they're open to everybody.
I love that. And now I want to switch back to Camila, and I would like to hear about what some of your values are as an entrepreneur in the field of fashion.
Absolutely. My very first value is sustainability. So, as we know, fashion is one of the top two most polluting industries. So, as a stylist, I aim to the make most with what you already have, and kind of help you not buy more than what you need. So, by doing that, I hope to put my little print on the fashion industry. And another value that I have is community. So I find it very important. Even when I was working in tech startups, my main role was community marketer or community management. So it always comes down to creating a community around any service or product that you put out into the world, whether that's because we have shared values, because we often have the same struggles, and we can all get better together. So yeah, those are a few of my values.
And so, how do you work as a stylist in this day and age, in this sort of world of Zoom? Obviously, you've had to pivot. Talk to us through that process of helping someone find their personal style when you've never even met them.
Yes, so first you can book an assessment call through my website. So I have a little questionnaire so that I can better prepare for our Zoom meeting. And then you also book a Zoom meeting along that side. And during our Zoom meeting, I just really try to assess the main pain points that you think you have. Oftentimes, we think we have a problem that actually roots from somewhere else. So I address that one main pain point and then see how else I can help you. It could be that that call is sufficient for you to figure out your style. However, I also offer follow-up services. So whether that's going through your wardrobe virtually and hopefully in person again uh, sometime soon. And then from there, I can make some recommendations to fill in any of the gaps that you may have within your wardrobe. And again, I bring back the value of sustainability and try to find sustainable items to begin with, if it's an option. So it's sustainability in fashion has been evolving a lot in the recent years. And I think a lot more people are aware that it is an option and that it's not just, your hippie t-shirts that are made from hemp. There's a lot more options now out there in the world. So it's really important to raise awareness towards them so that they can in turn also become more affordable and accessible.
Are your clients more open to secondhand shopping, secondhand clothing?
I would say it's hit or miss. Some people are very open to it and they think it's actually exciting to have a piece that has already had a lifetime behind them. Others are more, they want to have something that's their own, but that's when I would recommend, brand new items, but that are still sustainable.
Do you miss that tactile aspect of, shopping, of holding something in between your fingers, testing the fabric for stretch or for feel? You must really be hoping to go back to that post-lockdown.
Absolutely. The part that I miss the most is actually going through people's wardrobes in person because I find that tells a story. I love learning where somebody got a piece, and it builds trust really fast, and it allows me to know somebody more than like other people. Maybe sometimes their girlfriends may know about them and their style. So it's really interesting. And I do miss going in-person shopping. However, I do find that there's a lot of platforms that have facilitated it, and it's now more efficient to go shopping online.
So, what brought you to Invest Ottawa? What pain points did you have that the Digital Mainstreet program helped you resolve or address?
So the main pain point was that I had no online presence for my business in itself. I had my own Instagram account, and that's where I was promoting all of my services. And it wasn't clear like how I distinguish myself from my business. So at Invest Ottawa, they helped me just build an Instagram for my business alone and a website. So similarly to Malika, it was something that I didn't have the bandwidth to do myself. I worked in tech, but it's really hard to build something for yourself. Like you need to take a step back and ask for other people's input in order to just understand your own branding, for example, or which colors you should be using. And so many little parts that play a role.
Asking for help can often be the hardest part. We just have a couple minutes left before the end of our time together. Unfortunately, these shows are never long enough, but I just want to know quickly what your plans are for the future in a post-pandemic world. Do you see your business model changing?
I do see my business model changing. I'm currently starting a product line as well. So one of the things while I was working with men is that I noticed they have a lot of options for suits, whereas women don't have that many options for suits and not comfortable ones. So being a woman, I want to make sure that women are empowered and comfortable in leadership roles. And that's what I'm currently working on.
That's amazing. So when do you expect we can see some of your designs? Because I'll be the first in line for a nice fitting women's suit for sure.
I appreciate that. Right now, it's in line to launch early 2022. Manufacturers are operating on a lower percentage right now, so we'll see when that can happen.
We'll definitely be checking your website for more details on that. Malika, just quickly before the end of our time together, do you foresee your business model changing? Do you think you might have a chance to maybe travel to meet some of the people who make those fabrics?
I would love to travel to meet the people who made the fabric. Most of my suppliers are in Nigeria, so I would love to meet some of the people who actually sold the fabric and also the ones that make the fabric. Hoping that post-pandemic, things will get better in terms of the ability of people to move, and I would love to meet them. But in
Will you
terms of
be
my business
expanding
model,
your
I
product line?
Of course, there's I'm always trying to find new things, adapt to the changing seasons, to the new environment, to people's needs. So, of course, I'm going to be extending my product line. What I'm actually working on right now is a swimsuit cover that's
Wow.
made with African wax print for people who would like to have a little bit of shelter from the sun, but still want to look good. And of course, these fabric are perfect for that because they represent the warmth, tropical climate, and the sun. So I'm working on that. It should be available this
I
summer.
can't I can't wait to see that. I want to thank you so much, Malika and Camila, for joining us today and for providing us with a front row seat to what it means to be a business owner in these challenging times. And for those of you who are watching us from home, thank you so much for joining us on Business Breakthroughs presented by Invest Ottawa. Don't forget to support local, and we'll see you again next week. Have a great night.